It is a horrific issue, and it does not get nearly enough coverage in U.S. mainstream media. Child sex trafficking. It is a booming black market business. Now, most parents cannot imagine this happening in their own backyard. And while we know it is a global issue, child sex trafficking is finally starting to become a mainstream topic in the U.S. A film called I Am Jane Doe, it was released in February. It highlights young girls between the ages of 13 and 15 years old who were picked up off the street and sold for sex online. The film takes aim at Backpage.com, but in reality, the issue of child sex trafficking is so much bigger than just one website, and the appetite for child sex abuse goes all the way to the top. This is a reality check you will not get anywhere else.
Reality Check with Ben Swan, powered by Dash Digital Cash.
It is a disheartening statistic. The child sex trafficking market is resulting in more than 1 million children abused around the world each year. So how has this market proliferated? Tim Swarns, he's a columnist and editor for the Indianapolis Star. He recently began publishing a series of articles about the child sex trade, a subject that he has reportedly investigated for over a year. And he explains that the child sex trade is like any other business trade. It's driven by supply and demand. According to a study by the Center for Court Innovation from 2016, between 8,900 and 10,500 children ages 13 to 17 are being sold in the U.S. each year. Swarns writes, the researchers found that the average age of victims is 15 and that each child is purchased on average 5.4 times a day. Now, to determine a conservative estimate of that demand, Swarns multiplied the lower number of victims, 8,900, identified in that study, by the daily rate of exploitation per child, 5.4, and then averaged by only one workday per week, 52. The result? Adults purchase children for sex at least 2.5 million times a year in the United States. And while the supply side is what gets so much media attention, the issue of demand, it doesn't get nearly as much coverage. Take the recent documentary, I Am Jane Doe. It's a film about parents who are seeking justice for their young teenage girls being picked up and trafficked for sex right in their own communities. Watch.
This is the United States. There's no possible way this is true.
I sent her out with one of her friends, and she didn't come back. Next thing you know, boom. She brought her into a life of hell.
So those parents took aim at the website Backpage.com for profiting off of its adult section, allegedly riddled with young girls being sold for sex. But even if Backpage.com is a platform for advertising and selling, a channel through which these transactions can take place, it's just one of many online channels being used by pedophiles to buy children to abuse. But is the problem the channels, or is it something deeper? See, what's missing from the discussion is the high demand perpetuating the child sex trade. Swarns explains the critical need to reduce demand has gained far less attention and money. The result? Buyers continue to abuse children with near impunity. Now, in the film I Am Jane Doe, the people buying children to abuse, they're described to be white, married men with families who live in suburbia. A former pimp interviewed for the film, Homer King, says on camera that he's sold girls to priests, lawyers, and even politicians. Swarns came to the same conclusion in his investigation when he writes this. This project began with a question. Who buys a 15-year-old child for sex? The answer? Many otherwise ordinary men. They could be your coworker, doctor, pastor, or spouse. So who are some of these men who are buying children to abuse? Well, remember Jared Fogle, the Subway sandwich guy? He admitted to charges of having child pornography and repeatedly having sex with minors. According to NPR, court documents show that one of the text messages that Fogle sent to a 17-year-old he paid for sex stated his preferences as, quote, the younger the girl, the better. Back in June of 2008, billionaire Jeffrey Epstein was prosecuted and sentenced to 18 months in prison for paying for sex with girls as young as 14. He served only 13 of those months. The appetite for underage sex goes all the way to the top. Some of the most powerful people in the world. In fact, the longest-serving Republican Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert, who was second in line to the presidency from 1999 to 2007, admitted to sexually abusing boys while he was a high school wrestling coach. After making the admission in 2016, the judge sentenced him to 15 months in prison and 2 years of supervised release. He called Hastert a serial child molester. He served only 13 months. Now, to be clear, there is no evidence, by the way, that Hastert actually paid for sex, but the desire to abuse children is what fuels the global child sex trade and the demand is high. Back in 2015, a special report aired on 60 Minutes Australia. It revealed that elected officials and elites in the UK were accused of buying and abusing children.
It involves a secret network of the highest office holders in the land, past and current members of parliament, cabinet ministers, judges, diplomats, even one of the country's top spies. These men are accused of some of the most sadistic child sexual abuse imaginable on hundreds of victims, some as young as 8.
Yeah, from the powerful elites down to otherwise ordinary men, children are easily being bought and abused around the world. Posing as a buyer, former special agent for the Department of Homeland Security, Timothy Ballard, has been setting up undercover sting operations through his nonprofit, Operation Underground Railroad, since 2013. Now, working in conjunction with governments all over the world, Operation Underground Railroad has so far busted 443 child sex traffickers and saved more than 1,000 victims. Here are just some of the 2017 operations. The operation that was held in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, 32 were rescued there, 9 arrested. Operation Gran Via in Mexico, 25 rescued, 5 arrested. Operation NN9 in Washington State, here in the U.S., 17 rescued, 21 arrested. And the Operation Jetsar in Cambodia, 11 rescued, 9 arrested. So what you need to know is that the battle to dismantle the global child sex trade is a massive, almost overwhelming undertaking. Yet mainstream media does not treat it that way. Consider this. Networks like CNN will give at least 40 days of daily coverage to stories like that missing Flight 370 back in 2014. But in those 40 days, using Swarton's math, about 250,000 children were bought and abused. Even if that made the news, we make a mistake when the focus of the efforts to end this trafficking is only focused on how children are sold, instead of focusing on to whom they are sold. That discussion is one we need to have, because until mainstream media and law enforcement will go down that road, we're not likely to see any real changes. That's a reality check. Let's talk about it right now on Twitter and Facebook.